Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. President Biden has unleashed the establishment hounds to help him continue dodging democracy. Of course, Biden and the DNC have all but declared the primary over before they allowed it to start by saying there will be no debates. That happened a couple of weeks ago. He's gotten criticism from a lot of folks, including Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr., who say, why not have an actual debate? Why not have multiple debates? Why not actually allow democracy to play out? Why not make yourself a stronger candidate by actually facing a challenge? Many have said that Obama became a stronger general election candidate because of the tough primary he faced against Hillary Clinton back in 2008. But so far, the narrative and the decision has been, we will not dare give credibility to RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson and have them on the stage as the current incumbent president. Well, it seems that Biden is unleashing strategists and other corporate ghouls to make that more palatable to the American public. Let's read this from The Hill. This was over the weekend. Biden allies brush off calls for primary debates. President Biden's longshot rivals increasingly want to debate him in 2024, but those demands are being ignored by the White House and haven't picked up steam with progressives in Congress. Biden's two opponents, RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, have talked openly about the benefits of debating. Third-party candidate Cornel West also said he would welcome the chance to go head-to-head with the president in a text message to The Hill. But the calls have not won support from liberal members of the House and Senate, at least so far. And Democratic strategists say there's not much reason to think Biden's campaign would sign off on a debate, especially given arguments that agreeing to share a stage would only elevate his two marginal opponents. Stick with that term, marginal opponents. We'll get back to that. Biden shouldn't debate them, said Jim Kessler, a Democratic operative and executive vice president of policy at the centrist think tank Third Way. Of course, Third Way is not centrist. It's a right-wing Wall Street-funded racket that tries to prop up candidates like Biden that will continue showering Wall Street with corporate welfare. They are both gadflies who have done nothing to earn the right to debate a sitting president in an otherwise uncontested primary. You have to earn your way to the debate stage, Kessler said. These folks are light years short of that. This was very interesting to me. And by the way, let me just tell you how this works. The reason The Hill is publishing this is because the White House asked its aides and its inside and outside ghouls like Third Way to float this out there so that the pressure they're getting to debate subsides. So this is called the narrative. White House, people close to the White House, on background, which means not on the record, talk to reporters and say, you should do a piece on the total unnecessary need for debates, really get it out there that we're not going to dignify, these gadflies with a debate because they're probably seeing his poll numbers are tanking and want to push out the narrative that the primary is over. We need to focus on Trump or DeSantis. So The Hill, being the dutiful corporate media that they are, that basically lives to serve the government and powerful corrupt officials, say, sure, we'll find some people to say that and push that narrative. And then they find Third Way and others. But I digress. When they're calling them gadflies, I found that very, very interesting. If you just look at the Real Clear Politics average of the polls, you got Biden at 64%. I think that's kind of surprising for an incumbent president. I'd want to see those numbers closer to 80% among the Democratic primary. You have RFK Jr. on average at 14%. We've seen polls with him up to 20%. And Marianne Williamson on average at 5%. Now, you could say, well, Jordan, Marianne Williamson's barely, low single digits. RFK Jr., that's impressive, but, it's still a far, far away. If these are gadflies, what would you call the 2020 mega debates in Miami? I remember I was there covering it. Look at night one. Remember, they had so many candidates, they had to break it up into different nights. You had Amy Klobuchar at that point was polling at 3.7%. Cory Booker, 4%. Julian Castro, 2%. Tulsi Gabbard, 1%. Tim Ryan, 1%. Governor Inslee, 1%. I forgot Bill de Blasio ran, 1%. John Delaney, Mr. Let's just keep everything the way it is because I'm a corporate millionaire ghoul. 1%. Forgot these people were running. So let me get this straight. RFK Jr., who's not my cup of tea, I haven't really kept that a secret, that he's at 14%, which is higher than everybody on the first night that got to debate, these non-gadflies, according to Third Way. RFK Jr. is polling higher than everybody but Elizabeth Warren. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the candidates that got to debate in 2020 are polling on average, lower than RFK Jr. But RFK Jr. is the gadfly. And again, I'm not pro RFK Jr. for the reasons I've outlined on this channel. But the numbers are the numbers. He certainly deserves to be on the debate stage. You look at Marianne Williamson. She's polling higher than 8 of the candidates that got to debate on that first night. Now, devil's advocate, you could say, well, Jordan, obviously it's a difference. This was an open Democratic primary. This is a sitting Democratic incumbent. I don't really see the difference. You either believe in democracy or you don't, right? We have primaries in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, whether it's an open primary where it's not a sitting Democratic or Republican incumbent, or a incumbent president. George H.W. Bush, he was primaried back in 1991, 92. Obviously, Jimmy Carter was primaried by Ted Kennedy. Were the media calling these folks gadflies? I don't think so. I don't think so. And by what the standard that the DNC allotted in 2020, these candidates, RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, by a massive amount, are polling higher than the majority of candidates that were led on that debate stage. Look at night 2. Obviously, Bernie, Biden, and Bernie were polling higher than both Marianne and RFK Jr. But Pete Buttigieg, he was at 13%. He was allowed on the debate stage the second night. RFK Jr. is polling on average at 14%. Harris was polling lower than RFK Jr. Andrew Yang, less than 2%. Kirsten Gillibrand, less than 2%. Hickenlooper, less than 2%. Bennett, 1%. Marianne Williamson, at that point, was polling lower than she's polling now. She was allowed on the debate stage. Eric Swalwell, 1%. So the overwhelming majority of candidates for the first Democratic debate in Miami were polling, on average, lower than both RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. I never heard the term that these folks are gadflies. I never heard the term that these folks, what did he say? You have to earn your way on the debate stage. These folks are light years short of that. I mean, I don't work for RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson, but you might want to point out these numbers. You might want to push it out on social media. You might want to point out the complete double standard and selective enforcement by the DNC, where they allowed every unpopular vanilla cookie cutter corporate Democrat on stage because they were part of the corporate cartel that is the Democratic Party. And yeah, we'll throw you on if you're at 1%. But if Marianne Williamson's at 5% and RFK Jr. is at 14%, I mean, you don't have to be like hardcore progressive, neoliberal. I mean, math is math, and what's fair is fair. What's really going on here, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not diagnosing Biden with anything. Even if Biden didn't have anything, mentally or physically wrong with him, which clearly he's not in prime time anymore. I don't think they want him on a debate stage with two significantly younger. I think RFK Jr. is about 11 years younger than him. Marianne Williamson, about the same. I think RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson are around the same age, 69, 70. Obviously, RFK Jr. has the voice condition, but he's able to articulate. He's well-spoken. I don't agree with most of what he says, but he's a lot more sharp and charismatic than Biden. Marianne Williamson, is a very, very articulate, powerful, the way she speaks. Obviously, there's been reports that she is a bit of a control freak with her campaign. There's been reports of, people leaving in 2020 and this campaign again because of her treatment of them. I think the reports are a bit of a double standard because every male politician campaign I've covered, it was never reported that the male candidate were jerk-offs and, treated their staff wrong. But when it comes to Marianne Williamson, it seems like every story is that. But I digress. The point is, Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. on stage against Joe Biden, I think the contrast, putting aside policy, the contrast between the energy, articulation, cognitive ability would be strong. And when you're looking at, I don't think the main driver for the Democratic base will be much different. In 2020, the main driver was electability, who will beat Trump. I don't think that's going to change because the Democratic base is still deathly afraid of Trump getting back into the White House. I think they would be equally afraid of DeSantis. So I think the Democratic base is pretty much, I'll vote for whomever, even if they're not my cup of tea, has the best chance against Trump or DeSantis. You put Biden on a stage with two people that much more energetic, much stronger cognitively. Biden, depending on the time of the day or what's going on, he could have those moments that they say are a stutter, that he's just flailing at the wind and incoherent. That can be used against him. And particularly RFK Jr., if he's polling at 14%, if he has one lightning in a bottle debate performance and has a couple zingers, remember Kamala Harris had that zinger against Biden in 2020, her poll number shot through the roof. She ultimately failed because there was nothing underneath it. She's just a corporate hack. But if RFK Jr. had a particularly strong debate performance, you could see his polls going from 14%, 22 to 25. Same thing with Marianne Williamson. If she had a particularly strong debate performance, who's to say she couldn't start polling 15 to 20%? And then from there, the calls for more debates, the calls for a real primary get louder and louder. Corporate media probably is forced to cover that. And by the way, the DNC is not doing itself any favors, and Biden's not doing itself any favors. MSNBC Steve Kornacki, he's kind of the data cruncher and nerd for them. He tweeted this out. Biden remains a very vulnerable incumbent. His approval rating is 43%, and 68% say that his mental and physical health are major or moderate concerns, up from 51% when he ran in 20. For Trump, the number is 55% and was 51% in 2020. Right now, 68% are concerned about his mental and physical health. That's up, I'm not good at math, that's up 17 percentage points from 2020. No wonder they don't want him to debate. They're looking at the core numbers and they know his age and cognitive functioning and ability is a top concern, even among loyal Democrats. All it takes is one stretch in a debate where he's flailing around, incoherent, calling himself an Biden-Obama Democrat, mumbling words, forgetting who he served with. There were moments in 2020 he forgot Obama's name. Listen, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for or even to vote in the Democratic Party. If you want to go third party, have at it. If you want to vote in the Democratic Party, have at it. But I am here to say, if you're Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr., it's time to take the gloves off and maybe even come together to demand a debate, a joint interview together, demanding they debate, pointing out these numbers. How is it where the gadflies? We are not eligible or credible enough, but all of these candidates who were polling much, much lower than us, they got on a debate stage to the point where we had to create 2 different debates in Miami, which was, in my view, ridiculous. I mean, the data is here. I don't know what they're waiting for. I don't know why their campaign hasn't pushed this message. It is a complete double standard. And you want to know something? Shame them now. Say, well, independent voters are very, very important in a general election. And if the DNC cancels democracy and rigs its own primary out in the open, you might turn those independent voters off. You can't, as a party, as a Democratic Party, be crowing and hollowing about democracy is at risk, but basically only care about democracy when it suits you.